There's an interesting topic affecting your business experience that I haven't heard marketing courses or content address. And that's not a criticism, it exists outside the scope of what marketing usually covers. But when I first heard about this topic, how I felt within my own business immediately fell into place. And when I say how I felt within my own business, I mean the doubts that I was experiencing around whether or not I was even good enough to be in business, the fear around if people were going to hate on me for expressing my views in content, the thought of claiming that the work that I do has value to the women that I wanted to help. And in addition, the thought of charging money for that value just made me cringe. And I came across an argument that I found very compelling for why this is, that goes back further than feeling like you don't know what you're doing when you're new to business, or further back than any of the societal training towards employment that I talked about in previous videos. And that's what I want to talk about today, because this understanding had a significant impact on me and how I approach my business. Hi there, I'm Lyndon. Welcome back to my channel. It's so good to see you. This channel is about entrepreneurial leadership for women in online business, where after 9 years or so in online business myself, I want us to have grounded and soulful conversations about the real work behind building a business that lasts. Let me know if you have experience of feeling any of the ways that I'm about to describe in your business. Hesitation around posting, pitching, claiming authority in a space, becoming visible. Have you had a tendency to underprice your work or over-justify the prices that you're charging? Do you experience discomfort around the feeling of powerfully showing up, being ambitious, being bold, being true to yourself, sharing your true expressions, so you water it down and water it down and water it down before you do eventually post? Have you found yourself asking internally, who do I think I am to be telling other people about, insert whatever your expertise is there? Let me know if you have experienced anything in that arena. I certainly know that I have. And most content and guidance around this frames these experiences as stemming from mindset blocks or limiting beliefs, and that's true, but that doesn't necessarily go far enough or deep enough, as I've come to realize. And again, just to be clear, these feelings that I'm talking about aren't personal failures at all. They're not personality flaws, they're responses. So when we experience these things, what are we responding to? Well, my background many moons ago is in sociology. So the topic of socialization and societal conditioning is very near to my heart and important to me. And social conditioning isn't just an academic topic. It describes observable behaviours on a day-to-day basis and describes consistent behaviour patterns that show up in our lives and, for the purposes of our conversations on this channel, in our business. And particularly for women in business, because when we think about conditioning, what have women historically been rewarded for? Playing a secondary role, dominating private spaces, not public spaces, not drawing attention to themselves, being agreeable, being appropriately humble. But in online business, we're asked to do almost the exact opposite. It's very public. We're expected to be very visible, claim authority, stand out, stand by the decisions that we make for our business, ask people to pay us, take up space. And the gap between the conditioning that we bring into business and the actions that we need to take in business, that's not just a mindset gap. That's a really legitimate dissonance. And knowing this isn't an excuse for inaction. It's not devaluing of mindset work, but it is an explanation that frees us from unnecessary self-blame that holds us back. Even beyond this, and the part that took it that layer deeper for me is the concept of what we term as the witch wound, and feelings that still live predominantly within women that stem from lifetimes that we didn't even experience ourselves, the ancestral conditioning in addition to social conditioning that we have personally experienced. And before I go any further, I want to acknowledge that this is my ancestral story that's rooted in European history and culture, and inherited disempowerment isn't at its most damaging or enduring within my heritage. So although I want to talk with you today about the witch wound as a source of fears and visibility, self-promotion and other requirements for business growth, that's because it's a way of discussing inherited disempowerment from the perspective that's true for me and for others. But there's a privilege within this being the resonant story for me and others. It may not be your story. And when we talk about the witch wound stemming from the persecution of women during the witch trials, which is what that refers to, we're talking about a time when the patriarchy was on the rise, but so was colonialism, so was slavery, and many people faced silencing and oppression and erasure that's still very much more alive and impacting today. So I want to be clear that I'm not sharing the concept of the witch wound as some sort of false equivalence. I'm sharing it just as an example of how it's not only current social conditioning that determines our business experience, but historical as well. And it's one way to understand why there's a fear of power and visibility that still lives on and has an effect on us as business owners. The witch wound, if you're not familiar, is a description that speaks to the concept of collective trauma that women predominantly, in this case, carry from generations of persecution and suppression and silencing. A fear that says if you speak up, you will be rejected or targeted. If you stand out, you'll be punished in some way. If you succeed, it's just not safe. And that comes from the centuries when women who were knowledgeable, visible, and who had prominent roles within the community were feared by those creating a patriarchal structure. They were feared for the power that they had in their community spaces. So they were punished for it. They were hunted down, they were accused, they were turned on by other women, they were burned at the stake, or they had to shrink and stay small for their own safety. The legacy that remains can be seen through generations of women socialized to stay small, compliant, quiet, not to outshine people or to claim authority. The women who still have a fear of being a target if they stand out. And in a business context, that fear of standing out, fear of claiming expertise, the pull towards being invisible rather than embracing the visibility that our business needs, that has an understandable impact and is the one that we need to work with to unravel for the sake of our business and the results that we as business owners want to achieve. So when I first heard the term, the witch wound, it just resonated with me so strongly. Not just personally, although personally strongly, but not just that. It was also in what I was observing and had been observing all around me in the online business space, the conversations that we needed to have around pricing and our tendency to question our worth, to feel the need that we have to justify any price that we charge, to discount prices before anyone even asks because of a reluctance to value our work appropriately. Visibility, the preference for content that educates rather than content that will state a view, the reluctance to say, I'm an expert in this, sales conversations that we either cringe over, speak too long, over-explain, apologise for making an offer, try to soften it, backtrack. In decision-making, seeking external validation before committing, making sure that somebody else agrees that you're right to take the action that you're taking, or delaying action until you feel some level of certainty, as we've spoken about. And again, none of this is personal weakness. All of it is a coherent response to what we perceive as threats, and we have embodied that. But once you see that, once you recognize, then you have more agency over it moving forward. So the key message is the one that really links all my entrepreneurial leadership messages is about shifting our tendency for personal blame so that we reclaim the personal power and agency, because that's the pivotal shift from the more default way of operating to embracing self-leadership in and for your own business. So when you become aware of it, and awareness is the first lever, we can't work with this without having recognized it in the first instance. But when you become aware of this, there's the opportunity to shift from, well, I'm just not confident enough to take XYZ action in my business, to, well, I've been conditioned away from this, but I can recondition myself. And that's a fundamentally different starting point going into taking an action. Building a business from a place of reclaimed power rather than inherited fear is what allows for consistent action, even during uncertainty. Action that yields results, even if the result is simply data to evaluate to enable further directed rather than scattergun action. And this is the work of building the business owner to build the business. We know that growing a business isn't an overnight thing, regardless of what we may have heard online. And how you approach growing your business determines not only your results, but your experience of being in business and how you feel about it along the way. So this is a big topic, and I would love to know what you think once you've had a chance to sit with it. If you need to, let me know in the comments. Does it shift the framing of your experience in business? Where might inherited patterns be showing up for you in the way that you show up or shrink to stay quiet in your business? I'll be back soon with another entrepreneurial leadership development conversation to help you grow your business. So subscribe if it's a conversation you want to hear. Come back. And in the meantime, if you have a business friend you think would benefit from hearing this episode, please do share it with them. And if you want to leave a like on your way out, that would be tremendous and would help YouTube decide who to show my videos to. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye for now.